agriculture in many ways has been leading the edge on the adoption of data and digital technology beyond any other sector. We've really had a smart agriculture going back to the 1980s, maybe the 1970s. Joe has really been at the leading edge of looking at how information can be used in agriculture really as a substitute for material inputs and energy. And that information is not just data. That information involves tailoring the data with models and expert judgment into something that a grower needs to make a decision.
I'm going to jump right into my presentation here. And what I've shown in the picture here is from the Kentucky Cooperative Extension, where they put all the different types of practices and therefore decisions in agricultural crop production. And so as I titled it, Agriculture Requires Timely, Accurate Decisions. And again, all these slides have a lot of detail, so just for the sake of time, I'm not going to go through it, but give you just a big picture. And in the slide, we're seeing all the way from choices for planting, your hybrids, your pesticides, your growth regulators and your equipment, and all the way down to your storage and marketing. The point I wanted to use this slide is there's a lot of decisions, and all these decisions need data. The next slide addresses that. Decisions require knowledge and data. And I put together this little hierarchy of information flow, if you like, and it has two parts to it. One is on the right there in this hierarchy. You see at the bottom is data, which then needs to be analyzed or put into models, and the results of those analysis and models have to be integrated to start creating the products that are actually used then to start working up the ladder to decisions, and those products have to be interpreted for a specific type of production systems. All the way from decisions needing data, we need the knowledge, and now we need the infrastructure and communication. They envision that there's the farm manager is going to have a computerized system in front of him, and he's able to communicate with all those different types of equipment, all the way from spray applicators, irrigation, storage bins, transport, and you can see all the different types of stuff involved in a farming operation. But what is interesting is the grower social media that we couldn't see 15 years ago rising up, which were grower meetings. And that's really where you see the evolution going on there for major change. Some constraints that are real and they need to be addressed are we have a generational gap in tech skills. We have students entering agriculture that have been decreased number, and also students are coming with non-agricultural backgrounds are starting to get into agriculture because of the technology involved. All the point of Maglis is it integrates data, models, and tools, as well as some other mobile applications so that grower can get the information and address that timeliness we spoke about and accuracy in order to get information for decisions.
What I'm going to tell you about is weather and the availability of weather data that you may not realize is there. So, for example, I work for a company called RWDI, and what I do there is called forensic meteorology. So I go back and I recreate the weather at some place and some time in the past where there was an accident or something like that, and usually go to court and give evidence about it. And we can do this now because the weather models are so good that they can go back and recreate weather even if you didn't have a weather station there in the past. The whole point here is that with the weather models today, you can get very, very fine scale stuff. You can get it not just at the surface, but you can get it up into the air. So, for example, you can use a wind turbine running in reverse to bring warmer air down to the ground to protect crops if you wanted to. So there's all sorts of granular data that's available from the weather point of view that is very useful for crops.
We've embraced, let's say, a technology to be able to take to growers that there's a big need, because the traditional forms of, let's say, soil management and measurement has been very old and antiquated. So I know soil can be very much a boring topic, but all of us, all living beings, all living things, have a dependency on the soil. So soil has a ton of life in it, meaning not only from an organic matter and biological side of things, but from a radiometric side. It's giving off a radiometric energy that we can't taste, smell, or feel, but this instrument has a sensitivity to it. So that signal coming off of the soil is very solid and stable. And if we're talking about big data, it's one thing about big data, but if we can have big, solid, stable data, something that has a long expiry period, then that gives us much more ammunition on how to be able to leverage it from not only from one specific field to a vast number of fields. So it's a prediction of, let's say, all the various types of properties that a grower would be wanting to know, from fertility, but also to the texture side. When we know texture and, let's say, organic matter, we can be able to understand from a theoretical standpoint of, let's say, the water holding capacity. Then we can take that, when we know the water holding capacity, we can take it to the variable rate seeding, so we can optimize seeding placement.
5.6 billion pounds, and that's billion pounds of pesticides are used globally. Several of these chemicals have actually been used since the 40s and 50s. And you may not be able to read it, but on the upper chart are chemicals such as atrazine, 2,4-D. There's another third chemical. I'm not very good at pronouncing it, so I'm not going to try. But in 2008, those three same chemicals are actually still being used in considerable amounts globally. And they're one of the most widely used still, despite 60 and 70 years of innovation, technology development, et cetera. And I want to draw on the top chemical in 1968, which the top herbicide that's been used globally is atrazine. It's a chemical called atrazine. And based on what I could dig globally, it looks like since the time of its introduction, there's been about 7 to 8 billion pounds of this that have been used globally. That's my I think I'm underestimating this. What's important about that fact, and what I want to draw out from this, is the fact that this chemical has very profound and dramatic human health effects. It's an endocrine disruptor. It has dramatic reproductive effects, as well as just being, in general, cancer-causing. It was found that atrazine-exposed male frogs were actually both demasculinized and completely feminized. Just take that in for a second. Completely feminized and demasculinized, with 10% of those frogs developing into fully functional females that were able to mate as females and produce eggs. And atrazine is still used to the tune of 80 million pounds a year in the US for farming. The most important point of this is that we're still using chemistry that we've used 50 years ago, using that methodology. And so, to tell that story and put that in context, what we're trying to do at Frontier is basically, I think we now have the means, through the molecular makeup of the plant, protein structures, chemical structures, just using computer-aided design mechanisms, artificial intelligence, machine learning algorithms, and the composite thereof, everything that's included under that umbrella, to basically develop new herbicides that are very, very specific, that will, to the plant, kill only a plant, not have off-target effects, no toxicological. This is in theory, of course, but this is a very realistic goal that we feel is achievable with modern technology.